The war had been going on for so long that nobody could remember what started it. In the cold darkness of space, two great powers fought each other with weapons that could destroy entire worlds. The Vorthak Collective and the Zephyrian Empire had been enemies for 300 years, and their hate burned brighter than the stars themselves. Commander Zix floated in the crystal chamber of his ship, watching the latest battle reports flicker through his mind. The Vorthak were beings of living crystal, their bodies sharp and gleaming like broken glass. They could bend reality with their thoughts, making space twist and time slow down. But even with such power, they could not win this endless war. On the other side of the battlefield, General Kresh grew new arms from her biomechanical body to operate more controls at once. The Zephyrians were masters of flesh and metal combined. Their ships were alive, breathing and changing shape as they fought. They could adapt to any attack, heal from any wound. Yet they too remained trapped in this terrible stalemate. The Helix sector had become a graveyard. Dozens of star systems lay in ruins. Once green worlds were now balls of rock and ash. Space stations that had housed millions now drifted as empty metal shells. Both sides had lost so much that their home worlds struggled to keep building new ships and training new soldiers. In the neutral zones, where neither army could go, beings from other species gathered in small space stations to trade and talk. They spoke in whispers about the great war that consumed everything it touched. Some said the Vorthak and Zephyrians would fight until the universe itself grew old and died. But in these quiet places, old stories were told. Ancient tales passed down from one generation to the next. Stories that most people thought were just myths and legends. They spoke of a race called humans, beings who had once traveled between the stars long ago. These stories seemed impossible. The humans, if they had ever existed, had no crystal bodies or reality-bending powers. They could not grow new limbs or change their shape. They had no advanced technology that could tear holes in space or bend light into weapons. They were small, weak creatures made of soft flesh and fragile bones. Yet the legend said these humans had been great warriors. They told of battles where humans faced impossible odds and somehow found ways to win. They spoke of tactics and strategies that no computer could predict, of humans who could see victory where everyone else saw only defeat. Most people laughed at these old stories. How could such weak beings ever be dangerous? The Vorthak commanders dismissed the tales as primitive nonsense. The Zephyrian generals said such creatures could never have survived in the harsh reality of space warfare. But some believed. In dark corners of old libraries, scholars studied fragments of ancient records. They found hints that humans had really existed, that they had once been part of a great alliance of species before vanishing from known space. Some even claimed that humans were still out there somewhere, hidden in some distant part of the galaxy. As the war dragged on, more and more beings began to wonder about these mysterious humans. Could the legends be true? Did these creatures really exist? And if they did, what had happened to them? The battles continued. Great fleets clashed in the void, their weapons lighting up space like deadly fireworks. Vorthak crystal ships fired beams of pure thought that could drive enemy crews insane. Zephyrian biovessels released clouds of living metal that ate through armor and consumed everything in their path. Neither side could gain the advantage they needed. Every victory was balanced by a defeat. Every advance was met with a counterattack. The war had become like a vast machine that fed on death and suffering, but produced nothing except more war. Commander Zix studied the star charts in his chamber. His crystal body had grown dim with exhaustion after centuries of fighting. He knew that his people were dying slowly, that each battle cost them more than they could afford to lose, but he also knew they could not surrender. The hatred between the two sides had grown too deep, the pain too great. On her command ship, General Kresh felt the same despair. Her biomechanical systems had adapted to the stress of endless war, but she could feel her spirit growing tired. Her people had sacrificed so much, changed themselves so many times to become better fighters, that sometimes she wondered if they remembered what they were fighting for. In the ruins of the Zerion system, where a battle had raged for 6 months, scavengers picked through the wreckage. They found the twisted remains of crystal warriors and biomechanical soldiers, all mixed together in death. Among the debris, an old trader discovered something unusual, a data crystal that contained fragments of the ancient human legends. As he read the old stories, the trader felt something he had not experienced in years: hope. The legend spoke of humans who could find solutions when none seemed possible, who could bring peace to even the most bitter enemies. They told of a race that used not advanced technology but simple wisdom to solve the greatest problems. The trader spread these stories wherever he went. In the bars and markets of neutral space, beings whispered about the legendary humans. Some said they were just fairy tales, but others began to dream of finding these mysterious creatures. Perhaps they thought humans could end this terrible war that was destroying everything they loved. Deep in space, ancient automated beacons continued to broadcast messages in dead languages. Some of these signals spoke of humans, describing their last known locations before they disappeared from galactic history, but the beacons were old and their signals were weak. The coordinates they gave pointed to regions of space that no one had explored for thousands of years. As the war entered its 4th century, both the Vorthak Collective and the Zephyrian Empire faced a terrible truth. They were both losing, not to each other but to the war itself. Their populations were shrinking, their resources running out, their will to fight slowly dying. In the high command centers of both empires, leaders began to speak quietly of options they had never considered before. Some suggested seeking help from other species, but most alien races were too weak or too afraid to get involved. Others proposed secret negotiations, but the hate between the two sides made talk of peace seem impossible. Yet in both capitals, in the deepest archives where the oldest records were kept, researchers began to study the human legends more carefully. They found references to tactics and strategies that their greatest military minds had never considered. They discovered accounts of human achievements that seemed to defy logic and reason. Could these ancient stories hold the key to ending the war? Could the legendary humans, if they still existed somewhere in the vast galaxy, offer hope to two civilizations that had forgotten how to live in peace? As another year passed and the fighting continued, the search for answers would soon lead both sides to the most important discovery in galactic history. The humans were not just legends. They were real, and they were closer than anyone had ever imagined. Dr. Venka adjusted the sensors on his research ship one more time. The joint expedition had been flying through unexplored space for 6 months now, looking for anything that might help end the war. Half of his crew were Vorthak crystal beings, the other half were Zephyrian biomechanicals. This was the first time in 3 centuries that both species had worked together on anything. The cooperation was not easy. The Vorthak crew members communicated through shared thoughts and glowing patterns in their crystal bodies. The Zephyrians preferred to reshape their vocal organs to create different sounds and grew new sensors when they needed better information. But somehow they managed to work together because they all wanted the same thing: an end to the endless war. Their mission was secret. Both governments had agreed to search for clues about the legendary humans, hoping these mysterious beings might know some forgotten way to win wars. Most military leaders still thought humans were just stories, but some scientists believed the legends might contain real information. When the sensors began showing something impossible, Dr. Venka called both command teams to the bridge. The screens displayed a yellow star with several planets around it. One of the worlds was blue and green, covered with water and land masses. It was exactly the kind of planet that the old legend said humans preferred. Captain Thex, a Vorthak officer whose crystal body sparkled with excitement, sent his thoughts to the crew. The energy readings are strange. There are radio signals coming from the 3rd planet, but they are very simple, almost primitive. Commander Yeath, a Zephyrian who had grown extra eyes to study the data better, made clicking sounds of surprise. The signals match some of the patterns mentioned in the ancient records, but the technology level is much lower than ours. These beings are barely capable of spaceflight. The research team spent 3 days scanning the system from a safe distance. What they found amazed and confused them. The planet was full of life, and the dominant species matched the descriptions from the human legends perfectly. They were bipedal creatures with soft skin, no natural armor, and very limited physical abilities. But the most shocking discovery was that these beings were fighting wars among themselves. Using primitive weapons like metal projectiles and chemical explosives, they engaged in conflicts across their world. The alien observers watched these battles with growing fascination. "Look at this," Dr. Venka said, pointing to a screen that showed a battle between human armies. They have no advanced shields, no energy weapons, no reality manipulation. Yet observe their formations and movements. The Vorthak officers shared thoughts of confusion. as they watched human soldiers work together in ways their computers could not predict. The humans seemed to know what their enemies would do before the enemies themselves decided. They set traps that required understanding not just of weapons and terrain, but of how other humans thought and felt. The Zephyrian crew members grew new neural pathways to process what they were seeing. Human tactics were completely different from anything in their military databases. These creatures used deception, misdirection, and psychological warfare in ways that seemed almost artistic. They fight with their minds, not just their weapons, Commander Yith observed, her biomechanical brain working hard to understand human strategies. They predict behavior patterns and create situations where their enemies make mistakes. Both crews began monitoring human activities more closely. They established hidden observation posts throughout the solar system, using their advanced stealth technology to remain undetected. What they learned over the following weeks changed everything they thought they knew about warfare. Humans had been fighting each other for thousands of years, but their conflicts were not like the Vorthak-Zephyrian War. Human wars ended, sometimes through victory, sometimes through negotiation, but they found ways to stop fighting and start building again. More importantly, former enemies often became allies. The observers watched as human generals studied their opponents not just to defeat them, but to understand them. They saw human leaders make decisions that their computer models said were wrong, but which somehow led to victory. They witnessed human soldiers sacrifice themselves not for tactical advantage, but to protect their comrades and civilians. "This does not match our warfare algorithms," Captain Thex transmitted to his crew. "Their success rate should be much lower based on their equipment and physical capabilities. Yet they consistently achieve objectives that should be impossible." The research teams began sending daily reports back to their home worlds. The responses were immediate and dramatic. Both the Vorthak High Council and the Zephyrian Central Command ordered additional ships to the human star system. Within weeks, a small fleet from each empire had taken up hidden positions around Earth. But maintaining secrecy became increasingly difficult as more ships arrived. The human governments were beginning to notice strange objects in their skies. Their primitive sensors could not detect the alien vessels directly, but they noticed unexplained gravitational effects and unusual radio interference. Dr. Venka found himself caught between two pressures. His scientific training told him to continue observing and learning, but both governments were demanding that he establish contact. The military leaders wanted to recruit humans as allies in their war, while some politicians hoped humans might serve as neutral mediators. The decision was made for him when a human space probe accidentally came close to one of the hidden observation posts. The probe's simple cameras captured images of something that should not exist, a partially cloaked alien research station. Within hours, every human government on Earth was receiving the same impossible news. They were not alone in the universe, and the beings watching them were far more advanced than anything humanity had ever imagined. The human response surprised the alien observers. Instead of panic or worship, human leaders immediately began asking practical questions. How long had the aliens been watching? What did they want? Were there more aliens out there? Most importantly, were these visitors a threat to Earth? Both alien fleets received urgent communications from their homeworlds. The secret was out. First contact was no longer a choice but a necessity. The question now was how to approach these legendary humans without starting a panic that might destroy the very beings they hoped would help them. Dr. Venka volunteered to make the first contact. As a scientist rather than a military officer, he hoped humans might be more willing to trust him. He prepared a message in simple human languages, trying to explain who they were and why they had come to Earth. But as his ship decloaked and approached Earth's moon, he wondered if the humans would live up to their legends. Could these seemingly primitive beings really be the tactical geniuses from the old stories? Would they be able to help end a war that had lasted longer than human civilization itself? The answer would come soon enough. As his ship's communication systems activated, Dr. Venka began broadcasting the first message ever sent from alien beings to humanity. The message was simple. "We come seeking the legendary humans. Our civilizations are dying from endless war, and we believe you might be able to help us find peace." The response from Earth came within minutes, and it was not what any of the aliens had expected. The message from Earth came in over 50 different languages at once. Human governments around the world had been arguing for 3 days about how to respond to the alien contact. But when they finally answered, their message was clear and direct. Why should we trust you? And what makes you think we can help with your war? Dr. Venka was surprised by the human response. Most species they had encountered in the past either ran in fear or immediately offered to serve the more advanced aliens. But humans wanted to negotiate from the very beginning. They demanded proof that the aliens were telling the truth, and they wanted detailed information about the war before they would even consider getting involved. The situation became more complicated when both alien governments decided to send official diplomatic missions to Earth at the same time. Neither the Vorthak nor the Zephyrians trusted the other to negotiate with humans alone. Within a week, 2 massive fleets decloak in Earth's solar system, their weapons powered down but their presence unmistakable. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the emergency command center that had been built beneath the Rocky Mountains. Around her, representatives from every major nation on Earth argued about what to do. The aliens had provided basic translation technology, so communication was possible, but understanding each other was much more difficult. The Vorthak say they will share their crystal technology with us if we help them win the war, the Chinese delegate reported. They claimed their reality-bending abilities could solve all of our energy and environmental problems. The Zephyrians are offering biomechanical enhancements, added the American representative. They say they can make our people stronger, smarter, and able to live for thousands of years. All they want is our help in defeating their enemies. Admiral Chen listened to the arguments with growing frustration. Politicians from around the world were getting excited about the alien technologies and the possibilities they offered. But she was a military strategist, and she could see the bigger picture that others were missing. "You're all thinking like children who have been offered candy by strangers," she said, her voice cutting through the arguments. "These aliens have been fighting each other for 300 years with technology far beyond anything we possess. If they cannot win with such advantages, what makes you think our primitive weapons will make any difference?" The room fell silent as her words sank in. Admiral Chen had been studying the information the aliens provided about their war, and what she found was deeply troubling. Both sides had become so focused on their technological advantages that they had forgotten the basic principles of why wars are won and lost. "Look at their battle reports," she continued, displaying data on the main screen. "They fight the same way over and over again. The Vorthak use their reality powers to attack directly, while the Zephyrians adapt and counterattack. Neither side ever tries anything unexpected. They have become predictable." The alien delegations were confused by human hesitation. Both the Vorthak and Zephyrian representatives had expected humans to jump at the chance to gain advanced technology and join a galactic civilization. Instead, the humans were asking difficult questions and making observations that made both alien sides uncomfortable. Commander Zix, leading the Vorthak delegation, sent his thoughts to the human representatives. His crystal form glowed with patterns of confusion and slight irritation. "Your species is mentioned in our oldest legends as great tactical minds. Yet you seem more interested in questioning us than in helping us achieve victory." General Kresh, representing the Zephyrians, had grown additional vocal organs to communicate more effectively with humans. "Our biomechanical technology could transform your entire species. We offer you evolution beyond your current limitations. Why do you hesitate?" Admiral Chen looked at both alien representatives with the expression she usually reserved for junior officers who had failed to understand an important lesson. "Because you are not offering us partnership. You are trying to recruit us as soldiers in your war, and neither of you has asked the most important question." "What question?" Both alien leaders asked at the same time, their surprise at speaking in unison, causing them to glare at each other. "Why are you fighting?" Admiral Chen asked. "What started this war 300 years ago? What are your objectives? What would victory look like? And most importantly, have you ever tried to make peace?" The silence that followed was uncomfortable. Both alien delegations realized that they could not answer these questions clearly. The war had been going on for so long that the original reasons had been forgotten or become irrelevant. They fought now because they had always fought, because stopping seemed impossible, because the hatred had become part of who they were. Human leaders around the world watched as their military strategist exposed the fundamental weakness in both alien civilizations. Despite all their advanced technology and supernatural abilities, Neither side had clear war aims or exit strategies. They had been fighting for fighting's sake, consuming their resources and their people in an endless cycle of violence. Over the following days, Admiral Chen and her team conducted detailed interviews with officers from both fleets. What they learned confirmed her suspicions. Both the Vorthak and Zephyrians had become trapped by their own strengths. The Vorthak relied so heavily on their reality-bending powers that they had stopped thinking creatively about tactics. The Zephyrians were so focused on biological adaptation that they had forgotten about logistics, morale, and strategic planning. Meanwhile, human governments were facing massive protests and panic. As news of the alien contact spread around the world, some people wanted to hide and hoped the aliens would go away. Others demanded that humanity choose the side that offered the best technology. Religious leaders declared everything from the end times to the dawn of a new age of enlightenment. But Admiral Chen was developing a different idea, one so radical that even her own staff thought she had lost her mind. Instead of choosing sides in the alien war, she wanted humanity to do something that neither alien civilization would expect: offer to mediate the conflict. You want us to get between two species that have been trying to kill each other for 3 centuries? General Martinez, her deputy, asked in disbelief. They have weapons that can destroy planets. We have nuclear missiles that they could swat away like insects. That is exactly why it might work, Admiral Chen replied, studying star charts and battle reports late into the night. They expect us to be awed by their technology and eager to gain their power. They do not expect us to treat them like children who have forgotten how to share their toys. The breakthrough came when Admiral Chen requested a joint meeting with both alien delegations. Neither side wanted to sit at the same table with their enemies, but they were curious enough about human intentions to agree to a virtual conference with full translation systems. I have studied your war, Admiral Chen began, addressing both groups simultaneously, and I have reached a conclusion that neither of you will like. You are both losing. The alien representative started to object, but she continued before they could interrupt. You are not losing to each other. You are losing to the war itself. Your civilizations are dying because you have forgotten that war is supposed to be a means to achieve an end, not an end in itself. She displayed charts and analyses that her team had prepared, showing how both empires were consuming their resources faster than they could replace them. At your current rate of loss, both of your species will be extinct within 50 years, regardless of who wins more battles. For the first time in centuries, Vorthak and Zephyrian officers found themselves agreeing with each other as they stared at the human analysis. The numbers were undeniable. Neither civilization could sustain the war much longer. What do you propose? General Kresh asked, her biomechanical systems working frantically to process the implications of the human data. Admiral Chen smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. It was the smile of a predator who had found the perfect moment to strike. I propose that you let humanity teach you something your advanced civilizations seem to have forgotten: how to win a war by ending it. The response from both alien empires was immediate and predictable. The Vorthak High Council called Admiral Chen's proposal insulting, while the Zephyrian Central Command declared it impossible for primitive beings to understand advanced warfare. But something unexpected happened in the days that followed. Junior officers from both fleets began requesting private meetings with the human representatives. Lieutenant Kess was a young, Vorthak crystal being whose body still showed the clear blue patterns of inexperience. She met Admiral Chen in secret aboard the human space station that had been hastily constructed as neutral ground. My superiors say your ideas are foolish, she transmitted nervously. But I have read your analysis of our supply lines. How did you see weaknesses that our quantum computers missed? Admiral Chen pulled up a tactical display showing the Vorthak fleet positions. Your computers calculate the most efficient paths for supplies and reinforcements, but they assume your enemies will behave logically. We looked at your patterns from the perspective of someone trying to disrupt them. She pointed to several locations on the star map. You always establish supply depots in the same types of star systems, ones with asteroid belts for raw materials and gas giants for fuel. Your enemies know this, but they attack your depots directly, because that is how they have always fought. They never considered attacking the space between your depots. Lieutenant Kess's crystal body flickered with understanding. If someone destroyed the navigation beacons and communication relays between our supply points, our ships would have to travel much slower and less efficiently. Exactly. Your supplies would still arrive, but days or weeks late. Your entire offensive capability would collapse not because of battle damage, but because of logistics failure. Yet it would require minimal resources to execute such an attack. Similar conversations were happening with Zephyrian officers. Commander Yeath-9, a biomechanical being who had grown specialized analysis organs for tactical planning, met with Colonel Rodriguez, Admiral Chen's logistics expert. Your leaders do not understand the true nature of your problem, Colonel Rodriguez explained, showing Yeath-9 data about Zephyrian fleet movements. You have evolved your ships and soldiers to adapt to any threat, but you have created a different weakness. What weakness? Yeath-9 asked, her newly grown vocal cords still adjusting to human speech patterns. You have become reactive instead of proactive. Your entire strategy is based on adapting to what your enemies do. But what happens when someone forces you to adapt faster than your biology can handle? Colonel Rodriguez displayed a simulation showing rapid environmental changes across multiple battlefields. If someone created dozens of different threat types simultaneously, your forces would have to split their attention. Some would adapt to heat, others to cold, others to radiation. Your unity of purpose would fracture. These secret discussions with junior officers began to spread through both fleets. Young aliens who had grown up during the war started to realize that their elders had become trapped by their own thinking. The Vorthak had become so confident in their reality-bending powers that they had stopped considering alternatives. The Zephyrians had become so focused on biological adaptation that they had ignored other forms of warfare. But the real breakthrough came when Admiral Chen proposed something that shocked both sides: joint training exercises. Not combat training, but strategic planning sessions where officers from both empires would work together to solve theoretical problems. You want us to share military secrets with our enemies? Commander Zix demanded, his crystal form blazing with indignation. I want you to learn that your enemies are not the real threat, Admiral Chen replied calmly. Your real enemy is your own limited thinking. Both of your civilizations have become so specialized that you cannot see solutions outside your areas of expertise. The first joint session was held aboard the human station, with heavy security from both sides. Admiral Chen presented both groups with a simple scenario: a planet under siege that needed to be either captured or defended. But she added one constraint that neither side expected. You cannot use your signature abilities, she announced. Vorthak officers cannot use reality manipulation. Zephyrian officers cannot use biological adaptation. You must find solutions using only conventional technology and tactical thinking. Both groups protested that this was impossible, but Admiral Chen was firm. This is how humans fight every war. We do not have supernatural powers or the ability to evolve new capabilities. We win through planning, cooperation, and understanding our enemies better than they understand themselves. The results were remarkable. Without their special abilities to rely on, both alien groups had to think creatively. Vorthak officers discovered that they could achieve many of their goals through careful positioning and timing, rather than reality manipulation. Zephyrian commanders found that anticipating enemy actions was often more effective than reacting to them. More importantly, officers from both sides began to respect each other's insights. A Vorthak strategist's understanding of energy flows complemented a Zephyrian tactician's knowledge of biological systems. Together, they developed solutions that neither could have found alone. Word of these successes reached the highest levels of both governments. Hardline leaders were furious that their officers were fraternizing with the enemy. But moderate voices began to ask important questions. If their officers could work together to solve theoretical problems, why couldn't their civilizations find ways to end their real conflict? Admiral Chen sensed the shifting mood and decided to make her boldest move yet. She requested a formal meeting with the supreme leaders of both empires, to be conducted via quantum communication with Earth as neutral ground. Her proposal was simple but revolutionary: a complete ceasefire, while human mediators helped both sides identify their actual objectives and find mutually acceptable solutions. The Vorthak Eternal Council and the Zephyrian Central Consciousness both initially refused, but reports from their officers about human tactical insights were too compelling to ignore. Moreover, their own intelligence services confirmed what Admiral Chen had told them. Both empires were approaching the point of civilizational collapse. The negotiations took weeks. Human diplomats, led by former United Nations mediators, worked around the clock to address concerns from both sides. The aliens were suspicious of human motives, afraid that Earth was secretly planning to take advantage of their weakness. Admiral Chen addressed these concerns directly during a broadcast that was transmitted to both homeworlds. "We do not want your technology or your territories. We want something much more valuable. We want to prove that intelligent species can choose cooperation over destruction. If we can help you make peace, we prove that there is hope for our own species." The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Sarah Kim, a human psychologist who had been studying alien behavior patterns, made an observation that stunned both sides. "You are not enemies," she told the assembled alien leaders. "You are two parts of the same solution, fighting because you do not understand how to work together." She displayed her analysis showing how Vorthak reality manipulation and Zephyrian biological adaptation were complementary rather than opposing forces. Your abilities work better together than separately. You have been fighting each other when you should have been learning from each other. For the first time in 3 centuries, representatives from both empires began to seriously discuss not just ending their war, but actually working together. The idea was so alien to their thinking that it took human mediators to help them understand how such cooperation might work. But even as hope began to grow, a new threat emerged. Extremist factions in both empires, terrified of losing their power and purpose, began planning desperate actions. They would rather see their civilizations destroyed than accept peace mediated by primitive humans. The race was now on, between those who wanted to build a new future and those who preferred to die in the ruins of the old one, and at the center of it all, humanity found itself holding the balance of power for the entire galaxy, armed with nothing but their ability to see possibilities that others had missed. The attack came without warning at 0347 Earth Standard Time. Rogue fleets from both empires, led by extremist factions who preferred mutual destruction to human-mediated peace, emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system. Their message was broadcast on all frequencies in dozens of languages. "The humans will not corrupt our sacred war with their primitive ideas. This ends today." Admiral Chen stood in the emergency command center, watching as the tactical displays showed the approaching threat. 2 massive fleets, each larger than anything humanity had ever imagined, were racing toward Earth with their weapons powered and ready. The rogue Vorthak ships blazed with reality-distorting energies, while the Zephyrian vessels writhed and changed shape as they prepared for battle. "How long until they reach Earth?" she asked her tactical officer. 6 hours, Admiral. Our defense systems are completely inadequate against ships of that size and capability." But Admiral Chen was not looking at Earth's defenses. She was studying the positions of the loyal fleets from both empires, the ones whose officers had been working with human mediators. For the first time in 3 centuries, Vorthak and Zephyrian forces were about to fight on the same side. Commander Zix materialized in the command center via holographic projection, his crystal body dim with exhaustion and stress. "Admiral Chen, our loyal fleet will defend your world, but we are outnumbered. The rogue faction has taken most of our newest reality manipulators." General Kresh appeared on another screen, her biomechanical form bristling with newly grown weapon systems. "Our moderate forces are also insufficient. The extremists have evolved specifically for this battle. They have created forms we have never seen before." Admiral Chen smiled, and both alien commanders recognized the expression they had learned, to both fear and respect. It was the smile that meant she had seen something they had missed. "You are both thinking like separate forces trying to coordinate," she said. "But what if you stopped being Vorthak and Zephyrian for the next 6 hours? What if you became something neither of your extremist factions have ever prepared to fight?" The battle plan she outlined was unlike anything in galactic military history. Instead of 2 allied fleets fighting alongside each other, she proposed creating mixed units where Vorthak and Zephyrian ships worked in direct coordination. Vorthak reality manipulation would be used to enhance Zephyrian biological adaptation, while Zephyrian bioships would provide physical platforms for Vorthak mental abilities. "This is impossible," Commander Zix transmitted. "Our technologies have never been integrated. Our crews do not know how to work with your people at that level. Your crews have been training with each other for weeks," Admiral Chen reminded him. "Your junior officers already understand each other's capabilities. They just need someone to coordinate them. But who could coordinate such diverse forces?" General Kresh asked. "Our command structures are completely different. Our communication methods are incompatible at the tactical level. Admiral Chen's smile grew wider. That is why you need human coordination officers on every ship. We do not have your advanced abilities, so we have learned to work with whatever tools are available. We specialize in making incompatible systems work together. The next 4 hours were the most intense in human history. Teams of human officers were rapidly transported to alien vessels throughout both fleets. They carried simple communication devices and tactical computers that seemed primitive compared to alien technology, but which could interface with both Vorthak and Zephyrian systems. Lieutenant Sarah Park found herself aboard a Vorthak crystal ship where the crew communicated through shared thoughts and geometric light patterns. Her job was to coordinate their reality-bending attacks with a Zephyrian biovessel whose crew spoke in chemical, signals, and physical transformations. Need you to create a gravitational distortion at coordinates 127 Alpha when I give the signal, she told the Vorthak commander through her translation device. The Zephyrian ship will release adaptive spores at the same moment. The combination should create a field that disrupts enemy targeting systems. The Vorthak officer's crystal body flickered with confusion. This coordination pattern is not in our tactical databases. How do you know it will work? Lieutenant Park checked her simple human computer, which was running simulations based on data from both alien technologies. Because your databases assume you are fighting alone. My computer assumes you are fighting as a team. Similar scenes played out across the combined fleet. Human officers served as living links between alien capabilities that had never been used together before. They identified synergies that quantum computers had missed and created tactical combinations that neither side had ever imagined. When the rogue fleets finally attacked, they found themselves facing something completely unexpected. Instead of familiar Vorthak reality manipulation or predictable Zephyrian adaptation, they encountered hybrid tactics that their battle computers could not analyze. Vorthak extremist ships fired reality-warping beams that should have torn holes in space-time, but they struck fields where Zephyrian biomatter had been crystallized by Vorthak energy manipulation. The attacks were absorbed and converted into power for the defending ships. Zephyrian extremist vessels released clouds of adaptive combat organisms designed to consume any material they encountered. But these organisms found themselves in pockets of altered reality, where the basic laws of physics had been temporarily changed. Unable to adapt to impossible conditions, the weapon organisms simply dissolved. The human coordinators were not just managing individual battles. They were orchestrating the entire engagement like a vast symphony, with each ship and crew playing their part in a larger composition. Admiral Chen sat in the command center on Earth, watching data streams from hundreds of battles, adjusting the overall strategy in real time. Delta Group, shift your reality field 15 degrees to starboard, she commanded. Echo Group, prepare to release your biomines when the enemy formation enters the distortion zone. All units execute pattern Beethoven 7 on my mark. The patterns were named after human classical music, which both alien species had found strangely beautiful and mathematically precise. Each pattern represented a complex series of coordinated movements and attacks that maximized the combined capabilities of mixed Vorthak-Zephyrian units. The battle raged for 3 hours, but the outcome was never really in doubt. The extremist forces had prepared to fight their familiar enemies using familiar tactics. They had no response to hybrid strategies that combined the best of both civilizations under human coordination. When the last rogue ship surrendered, the silence that followed was profound. For the first time in 3 centuries, no Vorthak and Zephyrian ships were actively trying to kill each other anywhere in the galaxy. Commander Zix appeared on the main screen, his crystal body glowing with patterns that human translators identified as amazement and respect. Admiral Chen, what we accomplished today should have been impossible. How did you know these tactics would work? General Kresh materialized beside him, her biomechanical form still adapting back to peaceful configurations. Our 2 species have fought each other for so long that we forgot we were both intelligent life forms, trying to survive in a hostile universe. Admiral Chen looked at the 2 alien commanders who had learned to trust each other through human mediation. You forgot the most important rule of warfare. The enemy of your enemy can become your friend. But more than that, you forgot that the greatest victory is the one that turns enemies into allies. In the months that followed, the peace negotiations moved quickly. Both empires had seen what they could accomplish when they worked together, instead of against each other. The extremist factions had been defeated not by superior firepower, but by superior cooperation. Human advisors helped establish new governmental structures that allowed for peaceful competition instead of destructive warfare. Vorthak crystal cities began incorporating Zephyrian bioarchitecture. While Zephyrian adaptation techniques were enhanced by Vorthak reality manipulation, the war ended not with treaties or surrenders, but simply by both sides choosing to stop fighting. The hatred that had burned for 3 centuries was replaced by curiosity about what they could build together. Admiral Chen stood on the observation deck of the new Galactic Cooperation Station, watching as mixed crews of humans, Vorthak, and Zephyrians worked together to build a future none of them could have imagined alone. The legends had been true, but not in the way anyone expected. Humans were not great warriors because they were strong or because they had advanced technology. They were great because they could see possibilities where others saw only problems, because they could find hope where others found only despair, and because they understood that the greatest victory was not defeating your enemies, but helping them become your friends. As she watched a Vorthak engineer use reality manipulation to help a Zephyrian grow a new type of living metal, while a human coordinator suggested improvements to their technique, Admiral Chen realized that the real legend was just beginning. The galaxy had learned that sometimes the most primitive perspective was actually the most advanced, the perspective that saw cooperation as stronger than conflict, and peace as more powerful than war.